Welcome back. We have some breaking news to pass along. A grand jury has indicted Alex Murdaugh of 2 counts of murder for the murders of his wife and his son, and 2 counts of possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. Maggie and his son Paul were killed 13 months ago. CNN is also reporting a blood spatter was found on Murdaugh's clothing. It places him at the crime scene at the time of it. In a news release just issued by the South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson, it says in part that all of the efforts of our office and law enforcement agencies involved in this investigation have been focused on seeking justice for the victims' families. He goes on to thank SLED, which is the State Law Enforcement Division, and all of the attorneys in the office, saying that they won't be able to comment anymore because this is now a pending trial. The chief of SLED said this: over the last 13 months, agents and our partners have worked day in and day out to build a case against the person responsible for the murders of Maggie and Paul, and to exclude those who were not. At no point did agents lose focus on this investigation from the beginning. I have been clear the priority was to ensure justice was served. Today is one more step in a long process for justice for Maggie and Paul. That from Chief Mark Keel with with SLED, which is the State Law Enforcement Division there in South Carolina. Breaking news: the grand jury, which was impaneled, and they were at work this morning at 9 o'clock Eastern Time. They showed up to the courthouse. The prosecution obviously presented the evidence needed for an indictment, and that has happened. So within the last few minutes, Alex Murdaugh, who has a lot of problems already, has now been indicted for something in a totally different class than stealing money or embezzling money. Now he is facing murder charges, the murders of his wife and his own son. Let's take you back 13 months ago when Alex Murdaugh, Ed Bull is joining us, and we'll get his opinion on this in just a second. But first, I want to play for everyone the 911 call that he made when he told the 911 operator that he had just found the bodies of his wife and his son. Here's what he told the dispatcher.
I've been up to it now. It's bad.
Okay. Okay, and are they breathing?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and you said it's your wife and your son?
My wife and my son.
Okay, what is her name?
Maggie and Paul.
Maggie is her name?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And please hurry. I've been up to it now. It's bad.
Okay. Okay, and are they breathing?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and you said it's your wife and your son?
My wife and my son.
Are they in a vehicle?
No, ma'am. They're on the ground out at my kennel.
Okay, and did you see anyone? Okay, is he breathing at all?
No, nobody.
Is she? Okay, do you see anything? Do you see anyone in the area?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Did you hear anything, or did you come home and find them?
No, ma'am. I've been gone. I just came back.
Well, he says he was gone. He just came back and found them dead. The prosecutors in South Carolina disagree, and so did a grand jury today handing down those indictments. Ed Bull with us. An indictment from a grand jury is much different than a guilty verdict. Got a long way to go here, but obviously you don't bring these charges against someone unless you're pretty sure you know where you're going with it. There's some evidence here.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly, you know, CNN's reporting information coming out of the grand jury, which is a little interesting because those are highly confidential matters. But you're exactly right. But Ted, I want to just pivot for a moment. It would be fascinating. There's a concept known as 911 scoring, where you listen to a 911 call, not necessarily admissible in court, but very, very helpful in trying to determine. There's been great research done out there on listening to 911 calls and determining patterns. And that 911 call, I'm not trained in it, but I've read the books associated with it, is problematic. His use, some of the words that he uses, the fact that he's saying no ma'am, the fact that he isn't immediately calling for help, get someone here quickly, his explanation of where he was, those aren't the normal things that if you just come upon someone and you want to get them help, all you are focused on is get an ambulance here. How quickly are they going to be here? Why isn't someone here yet? You didn't hear any of that in that 911 call. You had him explaining what was happening. It seems on the surface, I would love to hear an expert talk about scoring that 911 call, because it isn't helpful for this defendant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just a good point, because he's saying that you just come on the bodies, and he's answering all the questions very coherently in a mind frame that maybe someone in that position wouldn't likely be. The other information that CNN is reporting is that there's this blood spatter that could be correlated to the weapons used. The 4 counts, there's 2 murder counts, and then there are 2 counts of possession of a firearm during the commission of a violent crime, which makes 4 charges. But that blood spatter, if indeed is true, that goes a long way. That's that physical evidence that can place him there, and there's no other explanation for it. As a prosecutor, having that part of the equation, how important is it?
It's absolutely critical. It disproves the defendant's theory. Any time in which you're able to put the forensic evidence, the science behind what you're attempting to explain to the jury, and not have them have to make a leap of faith, but rather say, this was his story, but this story doesn't make sense based on what we know the evidence establishes. And so from that standpoint, the fact that he probably has some blood spatter on him, which is not consistent with just coming upon the bodies. Blood acts different ways when it's being blown back, or whether or not it's being sprayed out, than if you simply, for example, put your knee down and there was a puddle of blood, those type of things. So the fact that they have forensic evidence that links him to this offense, and more importantly, disproves his statements, is absolutely essential for the state's prosecution.
Alex Murdaugh has been incarcerated for some period of time. He's facing bevy of other charges for defrauding people out of money. I mean, there's a different class of crime, obviously. But because of that, one might wonder, why did it take 13 months to bring these charges if they did have some sort of physical evidence and he was suspect number 1? Because let's be clear, from the get-go, there was not an all call to the people living in this rural county, beware, there's a killer out there. Investigators likely knew from minute 1 that he was suspect number 1. Having him already behind bars, that gives, does it not, law enforcement time to make sure everything is in place, all ducks are in a row, because let's face it, he's a lawyer, he comes from money, he comes from power, and this is a case that people around the world have been watching. A lot of pressure added to this. Do you think that that factored into possibly the delay, if you will, that it took so long to get to this point?
Well, there's a difference between your gut feeling and probable cause. And the reality is crime labs are backed up. It takes a while to get the evidence to the right people who are able to interpret it in a way that makes sense and is able to be then processed back to a prosecutor. You know, we like to think that we're pretty good in a courtroom, but when it comes to forensic science, we tend to learn on the go. When you know what you learn what you need to know for the case that you have. The reality is those things take time, and you want to be certain that you got the right guy, because leveling charges is an important decision. They change people's lives, so you want to be right when you come forward. And so it's a lot of give and take between prosecutors and law enforcement, and it takes time to process that evidence. And I'll also be very, very curious whether or not the evidence that they have include things that he might have said or done while he has been sitting in jail, which is not evidence they would have had initially.
Good point. Any phone conversations, et cetera, that have come through. As a prosecutor, how much pressure do you feel in a community to act, to bring charges? It's palpable, is it not? And how do you handle that when you're contemplating a case and whether or not to move forward with it?
Well, it certainly plays a role, but it isn't the deciding factor. You recognize, because most prosecutors live in the communities in which they serve, that you sense the pressure and the tension in a community. You want to make sure that your community feels safe, but at the end of the day, you are solely responsible to your ethical obligations, and you're going to make charging decisions based on whether or not there's probable cause and you have a good faith belief conviction's likely. And until you have that, you know that when you lie your head down at the end of the night, that you've done the right thing, it doesn't matter how much pressure there is, you don't act.
Alex Murdaugh is part of a prominent family that dates back a century in terms of local power and also attorneys, district attorneys, and he was an attorney himself. His law firm released a statement yesterday when it became clear that a grand jury was going to be hearing this testimony, and here's what it said. It said, today's news is sad and upsetting. Our thoughts turn to Maggie and to Paul, whom we loved and who we miss. Every day we grieve for them. Justice must be served. If the charges reported today are true and just, we ask for our judicial system to act swiftly and to bring a conclusion to this heinous situation. Ed, you live in a relatively smaller portion in Iowa. You live in Iowa, and you are the district attorney in Marion County there. A small town like we're dealing with here in South Carolina, something like this is a shocker, and something like this does have some real ramifications throughout the community. And when the person accused is someone of this stature, someone who everyone knows, the family, they know of him, it adds a lot of different elements, does it not? Moving forward, I know we're very early here, is this a case you wouldn't be surprised to see moved out of this county into maybe a larger jurisdiction?
Certainly, a change of venue is probably on both the state and the defense's mind. At the end of the day, you want to get 12 people who are sitting in that box who are not biased one way or another. Doesn't mean they don't know something about the case, but whether or not they're willing to set aside their preconceived notions and simply judge this case based on the facts that are before them. And oftentimes, that's very, very difficult to do in a smaller communities where, especially in this case, I mean, as we look, your viewers are looking at this, these grounds, gated grounds, and he's calling the 911 that they found his wife and son out by his kennels. Those aren't the typical property that the jurors can relate to. So you're right, this is a prominent family, but you could see in that statement from the law firm them separating out very quickly that they miss and loved the deceased, and that they want justice to be done swiftly.
Yeah, and calling it a heinous situation, I think is very appropriate. The charges against this guy are amazing. In the criminal mind, you think about, and you deal with it all the time, people are, some people are thieves. Some people are, they get themselves caught up in a situation. A lot of murders are based on love. And this guy seemed to have, these are allegations at this point for the most part, but boy, the allegations against this man, this is a prominent attorney. He was not only embezzling money, he was, he's been accused of insurance fraud, cooking up schemes, faked his own murder in a faked attempted suicide to get some insurance money, tried to bilk allegedly money out of an insurance company related to the death of his housekeeper at his house, and now the murder of his wife and own child. Ed, boy, I know you've come across it in your line of business a lot, the quote-unquote criminal mind, but this guy's a doozy. If all of this is true, I mean, he's one of the worst of the worst.
Absolutely, but it follows somewhat a pretty typical pattern. You have a person who's a thief, he embezzles, he needs to pay back the money. He can't pay back the money, things start to fall out of place. So how do I solve this problem? I solve this problem because maybe you're involved in the scheme to defraud the insurance company on the death of their housekeeper. Well, that then starts to fall out of control. Well, now he's looking for a way out. Unfortunately, people died in his path of looking for a way out. And the reality is, I'm going to try to choose my words fairly carefully. It's hard to explain shooting your 15-year-old son. I think there's lots of people, you have inter-family violence that takes place where spouses kill each other. We see that every day. Not defending it in any way, but there's a passion element that gets involved, a jealousy element that gets involved. It's criminal in its nature, but I think some people can wrap their heads around it. Wrapping your head around shooting and murdering your 15-year-old son, I don't know how anyone, anywhere, at any time can relate to that. And this is going to be an incredible uphill battle for this defense team.
Absolutely, it's very difficult to wrap. What could have happened there? Was he was confronted with something? Who knows? But we will know more as this progresses. Again, the breaking news within the hour: a grand jury has indicted Alec Murdaugh on 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of possession of a firearm during the commission of a violent crime. So he's now facing these 4 counts. That's the headline at this hour. These murders took place 13 months ago, and we expect Alec Murdaugh to be now facing justice for the death of his wife and his own teenage son. Our Chanley Painter is in South Carolina. She has been there reporting on it. She's going to join us by phone right after this. Stay with us.